Okay, let's talk a little bit about JavaScript variable types or data types. So I've got a bunch here. Here's an example of what we call a number, or sometimes referred to as an integer. And you can assign the number 16 to a variable. Now, a variable, just like you would inside of algebra, it could be x equals 5, and then we would take x squared or y equals x squared and get a value or something like that. And we can do that with numbers. We can say, length times 2 equals, something. And then we can also have other types where we might have something called a string. And in this case, the way we denote a string is by using quotations and then a semicolon at the end. Okay, so I could say, display the last name, and it would do it. This is an object, and we've talked about objects, and this is where you can house lots of different types of data inside of something. That might be, like we think of a car, again, it might be its current speed, its color, its name. We can put these all in. Down here we've got ways to denote this. So what we do is we can say var space x, okay, and that means we're going to declare a variable called x. But we haven't declared if it's a integer or a string or a Boolean or whatever it is, okay? But once we say x equals 5, then we know that that's an integer. If we were to put quotations around the 5, then it would turn that 5 into a string. But we can see here we have the word John instead of quotation, so it will take it as a word and not a number. Here's some examples of some strings. We can do a double quotes or a single quote. And if we do need to put a quote or a double quote within, sometimes you can mix those. So we could say he's called Johnny. So we'd do a single quote on the outside and double quotes on the inside if we want those to be there. Some examples, some numbers using dot something. Here's some Boolean examples. And Booleans typically are looked at true or false. And so, this one is x equal to y. Well, yeah, they're the same, so it returns true. And if x is equal to z, it will return false. So we can say that something's true or not. And you literally can say equals true, and that works. We have things called arrays. Might be a little bit complex for the scope of this class. But we can put multiple items in. We can say we have a variable called cars, and we have a Saab, a Volvo, and a BMW all within there. And then we can reference those out how we want. And then we talked a little bit about objects, and it's very similar to an array, but we have a property and a property value. First name is John, last name is Doe, age is 15. You can see this is a string, this is an integer, this is another string, and you can put Booleans in here as well. So kind of interesting how we can mix those. Let's go back here and let's start messing around with some variables and showing how those work. So I've taken my main page and I've just dumped my script right in here where I want this to show up. And maybe we want to do a document.write where I want to put something in, and we could just type out like hello, and then I could say Matt, okay? And that would display correctly and just say hello Matt right there, all right? Well, we could also mix in some HTML if we wanted to. I could put in some H1 tags like this, and you'll see how now the HTML is being output just like the text, okay? But maybe rather than having Matt here, I want to have it dynamically add something. So I'm going to put a double quotes in between. I'm going to put a plus sign on the either side, and I'm going to have we could have a variable here, and we'll just call it name, okay? Let's say first name. Now, when declaring variables, again, like I showed before, there's lots of different ways to kind of name them. You could do like lowercase f and then a capital N to kind of see the next word. You could do an underscore if you want to. Things like that. You could do like an F name. That would all work. Okay, but we're going to do first name, and we're going to allow it to dynamically recognize this here. So I'm going to say first name equals Matt. And so now you can see where I'm assigning Matt to that variable, and then we should output it right here. So I'm going to refresh it, and there's hello Matt. And so maybe we want to do something where rather than having it set, we want to get the name from somebody. So what we can do here, instead of saying first name equals Matt, we can say prompt. Okay, and when we're using a prompt, this is very similar to an alert, but a prompt will allow them to type something in, and we could say type in first name or something like that. So we'll go back here and I'll refresh it and I'll type out Matt and I'll hit enter and you can see hello Matt. And if I refresh it and I type out Joe, hit enter, hello Joe. So we're starting to give some of that interactivity we've been talking about to our page. So we can use prompt to grab some data from the user and then display it. Now these plus signs, I didn't describe what these are. This is what we call string concatenation, and this is where you can take a string here and a string there and tie them together with these little plus signs. Now it doesn't add them. It's not like you're saying 5 plus 5 equals 10. You're saying put these two together, and it works that way. We'll talk a little bit about operators and doing some math that way in the next video.